Okay, we're looking at lesson 2-5 on page 42, mental math. So we're talking about solving math problems mentally rather than, if you're adding, lining up the numbers or setting up a multiplication problem, but doing this in your head instead. How can you break apart numbers to compute mentally? So here's a problem. Joe has to read 45 history pages and 46 science pages by the end of next week. How many total pages must Joe read? Okay, so instead of setting it up as a regular addition problem like we normally would, think about 45 plus 46 as 40 plus 40, and take this 5 and 6 off, and then we'll add that. So we know 40 plus 40 is 80, and then we have this 5 plus 6, which is 11. 11 plus 80 is 91. So this is a way to just do this in your head without having to add it the normal way. So if you look at it, you're adding the same numbers together. Here's 45 plus 46, right? Because 40 plus 5 is 45, 40 plus 6 is 46. And then we're just moving them around, which is using the commutative property. Remember, we talked about how if we're just adding numbers, it doesn't matter the order. So if we break it apart and add them together in a different way, it's a lot easier, especially when we get these numbers to have a 0 in the ones place. Alright, let's look at some more examples. Okay, here's another example. We have 5 times 28 times 20. Well, it's going to be a lot easier to go ahead and multiply 5 times 20 because we have that 0 in the ones place, and then multiply it times 28. Remember, again, we talked about the commutative property of multiplication. It does not matter the order. These numbers can travel and move. So 5 times 20 we know is 100. Then bring down that times 28. Well, 1 times 28 is 28, and then we take those two zeros and bring them down here, and it's so much easier to multiply mentally. Alright, let's look over here in addition. Obviously, the commutative property works for addition. So we have 42 plus 39 plus 8. Compatible numbers. Well, 42 plus 8 is going to give me a nice even number because 2 and 8, right, those are my 10 facts. So let's add those first. 42 plus 8 gives me the 50 plus my 39. Now I can add that in my head. 50 plus 30 is 80 plus 9 is 89. So they don't show this broken apart, but that's how I did it in my head. Okay, here on page 42 are a couple examples of how you can use compensation to create these compatible numbers that are easier to compute mentally. So here we have 57 plus 698, neither easy numbers to compute mentally. But notice they say, well, let me take 2 away from 57, because if I add 2 over here to 698, I have this nice easy 700. And these then even out. Minus 2 plus 2, that would be equal to 0 or no change. So 57 minus 2 is 55. 698 plus 2 is 700. So I have now 700 plus 55 is 755. So by taking away 2 and then adding the 2, I keep this problem the same. Okay, look at the next problem here. 355 minus 297. Again, not easy numbers to compute mentally. But if I add 3 to 297, I now have 300. And 300 is a lot easier to figure out, how I could take it away from 355. So if I have 355 and I take 300 away from it, I'm left with 55. But remember, I added 3 to what I took away. So I actually took away 3 more than I needed to, which is why you add that 3 back on there to get 58. Look at that again. I added 3 to what I was taking away. So I took away 3 more than I needed to, which is why I had to add that 3 back on. Okay, then one more example. 5 times 89, this should look familiar. It's not easy to compute mentally, but I can use the distributive property, and I can actually change this 89, and let's say, well, what would it be if I made it 5 times 90 minus 5 times 1? 90 minus 1 is 89, right? So 5 times 90 minus the 5 times 1. 5 times 90 would give me, 5 times 9 is 45 plus my 0, minus 5 times 1. Take my 5 away, and it leaves me with 445. A lot easier to figure out rather than putting up your, 5 times 89 and working this out. This is what we're trying to get away from. Use your mental math. Okay, let's do some examples. And I'll start and you follow. Okay, let's do the odd in the guided practice. And remember, go ahead and pause me right now. Try and solve it using mental math, and then compare it to how I do it. Alright, so we have 89 plus 32 plus 8. I'm looking at what numbers are going to be compatible and make this easier to work together, and I can see that 8 and 32 right here, because I have 8 and 2, which is a 10 fact, would then add together to get 40 plus 89. Now if I look at this and I want to do it in my head, I will make 89, 80 plus 9 plus 40, and I know that 80 plus 40 gets me 120. Remember, whatever order I want, plus 9 is 129. And this wouldn't have to be worked out on paper. This is something that you could do in your head, but you just show the mental steps or the mental process as you do this. Okay, number 3, 2 times 9 times 20. Well, go ahead and do 2 times 20, if that's what I would do. I'd go ahead and put my 2 times 20 again. Commutative property of multiplication. I can do this first and then multiply it times 9. So 2 times 20 is 40. Now times 9. 4 times 9 is 36 plus my 0. And I get 360. Number 5, 8 times 39. Well, let's change this and make this 8 times something easier, 40 minus 1, or 8 times 40, remember the distributive property, minus 8 times 1. Well, 8 times 4 is 32, plus my 0, so 320 minus 8, and I know 20 minus 8 is 12, so this would give me 312. This is just trying to do these steps that you could do in your head, but writing them down. And my last one, 453 minus 397. Something you'd have to line up and start subtracting by the ones place and borrowing and doing all that. But using compensation, you can say, hey, let's make 397 400. Let's add 3 to that, okay? And make it 453 minus 400. Much easier to solve. If I take 400 from 453, I have 53 left. But look, I took away 3 too many. So I need to add 3 back to that, which would get me 56. Okay, for your homework, I'd like you to do problems the even in your book on guided practice 2, 4, 6, and 8. Using the commutative property of addition or multiplication, or compensation, or the distributive property, but however you can do this to solve it and show your work. And don't forget to come to class with a question. See you tomorrow.